March 28, 2017. 4:47 a.m. Lithuania. The darkness before dawn is absolute, silent, deadly. Armed officers move like shadows through the pre-dawn mist, their breath visible in the freezing air. They surround a house where a man has been hiding for 10 long years. A man who believed he was beyond the reach of justice. A man who called himself a ghost. But this morning, the ghost is about to discover something terrifying. You can run, you can hide, you can disappear into the shadows of Europe's underworld, but you can never truly vanish. Thousands of miles away, in the rain-soaked streets of Manchester, detectives are hunched over encrypted messages, piecing together another empire. One built on hidden weapons, cocaine by the kilo, and cannabis farms worth millions. They're tracking men who communicate in code, who use the handles of Mexican cartel bosses, who believe their technology makes them invisible. They're wrong. Two separate investigations, two different criminal empires. One devastating truth: no matter how careful you are, no matter how many layers of protection you build, one tiny detail, one microscopic crack in your armor can bring your entire world crashing down in flames. This is the story of James Mulvey, of Najib Salem, of Nahidul Manaf. This is the story of how their empires were built on blood and cocaine, and how they finally, inevitably, catastrophically fell. Welcome to UK True Crime Files. And trust me, you're not ready for what comes next. Let's rewind the clock, back to where nightmares are born. 2007, the Worcestershire countryside, Ink Barrow, population barely 1,000. The kind of sleepy English village where nothing ever happens, where retired couples walk their dogs past ancient churches, where the biggest crime is usually a stolen bicycle. But beneath this picture-perfect surface, something sinister is moving, something worth tens of millions of pounds. The method is brilliant in its simplicity, genius even. Industrial rollers, massive hollow cylinders weighing hundreds of kilos, are moving between warehouses in Holland, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. To customs officers, to freight inspectors, to anyone watching, they're just ordinary cargo. Routine, boring, the mundane machinery of international commerce. But inside these rollers, tightly packed bricks of pure cocaine, compressed blocks of premium cannabis, phenacetin cutting agents to stretch the supply even further. The rollers pass through the West Midlands like clockwork. They stop at a yard in Ink Barrow, this tiny, unsuspecting village, before continuing their deadly journey to Ireland, where the loads are broken down, distributed, and pumped into the veins of cities. For months, it works flawlessly, perfectly, like a Swiss watch. At least 14 trips, 14 successful runs, millions upon millions of pounds worth of narcotics flowing through the heart of England, and nobody suspects a thing. But then, in a warehouse outside Antwerp, Belgium, a worker notices something strange, something that doesn't quite add up. The same rollers keep appearing, moving in, moving out, too frequently, too regularly. It's not normal freight behavior. Suspicion ignites like a match in the darkness. Belgian authorities don't just seize the cargo. Oh no. They're smarter than that. They set a trap, a beautiful, patient, devastating trap. They allow a controlled delivery to continue. They track the roller as it crosses borders, as it passes through Worcestershire, as it makes its way toward Naas, Dublin. Every movement is watched. Every transfer is logged. Every person who touches that roller is now under surveillance. And when officers finally move in for the kill, the evidence is undeniable, irrefutable, damning. An international pipeline of drugs, disguised as ordinary freight, running between continental Europe and Britain like a poisoned artery. But the February 2007 seizure doesn't just reveal a single shipment. It rips open the curtain on something far more terrifying. An operation that has been running for months, maybe years. And what investigators uncover next will make your blood run cold. The February 2007 seizure in Belgium isn't treated as a lucky break. In court, the judge makes it brutally clear: this is a representative load. Evidence that speaks for a conspiracy so massive, so audacious, it defies belief. The numbers are staggering, breathtaking, terrifying. 20 kilos of high-purity cocaine, 364 kilos of cannabis, 10 kilos of phenacetin. But remember those 14 previous trips, the ones that went through undetected, each one packed in the same style, almost the same weight. If the estimates are correct, and investigators believe they are, it means that more than 5,400 kilos of cannabis and 300 kilos of cocaine had already been shipped through the same route, already on the streets, already destroying lives. The value? Hold your breath. The cocaine alone is worth at least $17 million, but at street level, that number explodes to $42 million. The cannabis? At retail level, it's valued at around $60 million. Added together, this conspiracy is moved between 68 million and 100 million in drugs. Let that sink in. 100 million pounds. For a smuggling operation based around haulage yards and transport companies, the profits are astronomical, obscene. Behind the logistics sits a network of bogus firms, shell operations designed to look legitimate. On paper, JBS Transport, Mulvey's Birmingham haulage business, appears to be just another subcontractor. It even receives millions in payments from TNT, one of the UK's largest delivery companies. But in reality, those same vehicles are the backbone of an industrial-scale trafficking enterprise. What makes the scheme so difficult to detect is its normality, its mundane appearance. Lorries pass through familiar checkpoints. Drivers file standard paperwork. Freight yards like ink barrows seem routine and unremarkable. It's hiding in plain sight. The perfect crime. For the first time, investigators can see the true size of the network in front of them. But unpicking who's behind it, how many hands are involved, how deep the corruption runs, that will take years. And while some of those hands are quickly caught, one figure has already slipped out of reach. The ghost is gone, and the hunt is about to begin. By 2009, the case reaches Birmingham Crown Court. Prosecutors lay out the evidence like pieces of a horrifying puzzle. The courtroom is silent as the scale of the conspiracy becomes clear. Two key figures take center stage at that trial. Barry Phipps, the transport manager. The man who kept the wheels turning. He organized the journeys, ensured the consignments kept moving, made sure the shipments appeared routine and legitimate. His reward? 25 years in prison. Alongside him stands Jeffrey Edwards, the lorry driver trusted to move the drugs across borders. His role in carrying the loads earns him 20 years behind bars. In total, 5 men are convicted that year, receiving combined sentences of more than 86 years. For law enforcement, it's a decisive blow. A victory, but it's a hollow one. Because one man is missing. James Mulvey, the haulage boss, the architect, the man investigators describe as the ghost. He's vanished. Just days before the arrests, he left the country. It wasn't an impulsive move. It wasn't panic, it was calculated, methodical. Mulvey understood that the noose was tightening, and he slipped through it before the first knock came at the door. His absence casts a dark shadow over the convictions. The drivers and managers are in prison, yes, but the man at the center, the puppet master, he's slipped away into the shadows. From that point on, Mulvey is spoken of as one of the untouchables, a ghost who can never be caught. But the hunt for him, it's only just beginning. James Mulvey doesn't just disappear, he vanishes into a life of absolute luxury. His methods are meticulous, paranoid even. He uses disposable phones, hotel stays are paid in cash. For financial movements, he relies on layers of trusts, advisors, and offshore accounts, laundering millions while keeping his own name out of the paperwork. The system isn't perfect, but it's enough to frustrate investigators for years. By the time authorities try to trace him, Mulvey is always 3 steps ahead. Yet while he leaves almost no paper trail, he makes absolutely no attempt to hide his wealth. In southern Spain, near Marbella, he builds a 1.5 million villa. It's not just a house, it's a palace. Indoor and outdoor pools, a private cinema room, a lift between floors. The kind of property that screams money. He's seen wearing Rolex watches, driving top-end cars, Range Rovers, Mercedes, vehicles that cost more than most people earn in a decade. He's fueling what prosecutors later describe as a 1,000 a week cocaine habit. Think about that. £1,000, every single week, just on cocaine. Estimates suggest he's spending as much as $75,000 in cash every week. Funding holidays, hotels, luxury goods, living like an exiled king, he travels extensively using bespoke holiday companies to arrange 22 overseas trips while keeping ties to the UK. His children, though he lives abroad, are enrolled in private schools in Worcestershire and Somerset, a visible reminder of the wealth the smuggling operation has generated. To those around him, Mulvey appears as a successful businessman, charming, wealthy, untouchable, but behind the facade he's keeping his head just low enough to avoid direct attention. Always shifting, always careful. His lifestyle has all the hallmarks of someone who believes he's slipped beyond the reach of the law. For years it seems to work. He invests in nightclubs and bars. He mixes in the expatriate scene. He builds a reputation as a man impossible to pin down. But luxury and secrecy can only go so far. The longer Mulvey stays free, the more determined investigators become to break through the smoke he's created. And when violence begins to spill into his circle, when blood starts flowing in the streets of Marbella, his ghost-like existence is pulled back into sharp, terrifying focus. Investigators trace Mulvey's movements abroad and discover something chilling. He isn't acting alone. Evidence later presented in court reveals that he's part of a tight circle of 4 men who run the smuggling pipeline together. Mulvey is the logistics brain, the one who controls the lorries and the freight firms. Alongside him is Gerard Hatchet Kavanagh, an Irish enforcer with a reputation for extreme violence, a man whose nickname tells you everything you need to know. 2 others complete the group, one known only as Glasses, and another associate whose name is never publicly confirmed. Together, the 4 form a crew that connects the Midlands supply chain with powerful Irish crime families. These include the Kinahan cartel and the extended Kavanagh network, both of which dominate drug trafficking routes between continental Europe and Ireland. Mulvey's role gives him direct access to cross-border supply lines, moving drugs from Holland and Belgium through the UK before their final delivery in Dublin. The alliances bring power, wealth, influence, but they also bring danger. By 2014, that danger becomes horrifyingly real. Gerard Kavanagh is gunned down in a bar in Marbella. A public execution, broad daylight, blood on the floor, witnesses screaming. His death sends shockwaves through the Irish underworld, signaling open conflict among rival factions. For Mulvey, it's also a brutal reminder that the life he's living is balanced on a knife's edge. Covert recordings obtained by the National Crime Agency give a glimpse into just how aware he is of the threat. In one conversation captured on tape, he's heard explaining to a woman that in his world, retribution isn't aimed directly at you. It's aimed at those closest to you. As he puts it chillingly, they kill the people you love. The recordings become a rare window into the mindset of a man who projects untouchability, but privately admits that the danger is constant, suffocating, inescapable. Mulvey's international ties give him influence, wealth, and protection. But they also keep him locked in a violent circle where betrayal means death, and loyalty is measured in blood. And as the NCA continues to track him, the same connections that once made him powerful are now making him vulnerable. The net is closing. When the roller shipments are exposed in 2007, for most traffickers, the loss of such a carefully constructed route would be crippling, devastating, the end. But for James Mulvey, it's just the beginning of something new. According to investigators, Mulvey and his associates begin experimenting with new ways to disguise their consignments. They adapt, they evolve. Drugs are packed into the shells of inflatable sea scooters, watercraft that look like leisure equipment, harmless, easy to ship, the kind of thing tourists buy for beach holidays. Other loads are hidden inside replica motorbikes, including Harley-Davidsons. Their hollow frames conceal tightly wrapped cocaine and cannabis. The shipments follow a familiar path. They're smuggled into the UK, routed through King's Heath in Birmingham, and from there pushed onwards into Ireland. For Mulvey, it's a continuation of the same trade, only under different packaging. Each disguise gives the appearance of legitimate goods, the kind of cargo unlikely to raise suspicion during transport. This shift in methods shows both Mulvey's ingenuity and his determination. Even as his former associates serve decades in prison, he presses ahead with new consignments, new routes, new methods. He's a ghost who refuses to die. But every adjustment leaves traces. Digital breadcrumbs, financial footprints, surveillance opportunities. And what Mulvey doesn't know, what he can't possibly know, is that while he refines his methods, investigators are quietly building something far more dangerous. A surveillance net that will follow him across countries, across years, and right into his most private moments. The National Crime Agency takes the files from West Midlands Police and launches a new, expansive investigation. This time, it won't be limited to haulage yards and customs seizures. This time, they're going global. The scale of the operation is extraordinary. Unprecedented, it stretches across 9 countries, combining surveillance units, financial analysts, and liaison offices in Europe and further afield. Teams work through more than 20 million documents, 20 million, dissecting trusts, offshore accounts, and complex money movements designed to disguise profits. At the same time, covert units place Mulvey under close watch, recording his conversations and movements whenever possible. What they capture is telling, revealing, damning. In one recording, Mulvey can be heard boasting to a woman, "No one can control me, I'm nuts." The bravado matches the reputation he's built for himself, the untouchable ghost. But in another moment, the mask slips. He admits openly that he fears assassination, that he knows the danger is real, that he understands his life could end at any moment. For investigators, it's evidence of a man both arrogant and deeply aware of the risks surrounding him. But the surveillance doesn't just focus on Mulvey himself. After his arrest in Lithuania, which we'll get to in a moment, investigators keep watching his circle, because they know the network doesn't die with one arrest. In April 2017, undercover officers secretly film a meeting involving his father, James Mulvey Sr., at Sutton Coldfield Crematorium. Sitting on a bench with him is a figure investigators can't identify at first. But when the footage is reviewed, the man is confirmed as Thomas Kavanagh, a powerful figure in the Kinahan cartel and Mulvey's own cousin. Only a week later, Mulvey Sr. is seen again, this time at Kingsbury Leisure Centre outside Birmingham. On that occasion, Kavanagh is joined by Sean McGovern, another senior Kinahan associate who will later flee to Dubai. The meetings, both discreet and away from public attention, show that even while Mulvey is locked in a Lithuanian cell, the networks around him are still active, still operational, still tied to the most dangerous players in the Irish underworld. For years, he's been the ghost no one could pin down. But by 2017, the NCA is finally in position to strike. And when they do, it's swift, brutal, devastating. March 28, 2017, Kaunas, Lithuania. Before sunrise, Lithuanian special forces surround the property in absolute silence. They've trained for this, rehearsed it. They know exactly what they're doing. And then, like a thunderclap, they move. They storm the house with weapons drawn, moving with military precision. Doors are smashed open, rooms are cleared in seconds. Inside, James Mulvey is caught completely off guard, half-dressed, disoriented, vulnerable. He's forced to the ground at gunpoint. The images later released by authorities show a man who for years had styled himself as untouchable, now pinned on the floor, barefoot, with rifles trained on him. The ghost has been caught. Reports from the raid state that a firearm, 100 rounds of ammunition, and ballistic vests are also seized at the property. Cash and other items are recovered in connected searches. Whether or not Mulvey ever planned to use the weapons remains unclear. But the discovery underscores the high-risk world he's been living in. For law enforcement, the arrest is a landmark, a triumph. Now under a European arrest warrant, he's swiftly extradited back to the UK, from Kaunas to Crown Court. The ghost who evaded capture for so long is finally within reach of British justice. The arrest marks the end of his life as a fugitive and the beginning of the trial that will determine just how long he'll spend behind bars. And trust me, the sentence is going to shock you. Spring 2018, Birmingham Crown Court. For 10 weeks, the jury hears the full scale of the conspiracy. Every detail, every shipment, every lie. The charges are fourfold: 2 counts of conspiring to import cocaine and 2 counts of conspiring to smuggle cannabis, stretching across 2006 and 2007. Prosecutors described the smuggling strategies in forensic detail. The surveillance methods, the financial trails, the encrypted communications, the violence. The evidence is overwhelming, crushing, irrefutable. The verdict comes back, guilty. Mulvey is convicted on all 4 conspiracy charges. In June 2018, Judge Mark Wall QC delivers the sentence. He describes Mulvey's actions as large-scale industrial smuggling, a conspiracy that brought tons of drugs into the UK and Ireland. He tells the court there's no sign of remorse, no acknowledgement of the damage the trade has caused to communities. No regret whatsoever. For Mulvey, the profit has always been the priority, the only priority. The sentence, 32 years in prison, 32 years. It's one of the longest terms handed down for a trafficking conspiracy of its kind in the UK at the time. The ghost is finally caged. But while James Mulvey's downfall plays out in court, another investigation is quietly building hundreds of miles away. In Manchester, and this one involves not just drugs, but guns. By the time police begin closing in, 2 names stand at the center of a new operation: Najib Salem and Nahidul Manaf. Salem, then in his mid-40s, lives in Leh. He's the senior figure, the organizer. Investigators describe him as the one who controls the supply lines, moving cocaine and cannabis through established contacts, while also reaching into the firearms trade. His reach stretches across Greater Manchester and beyond. He deals in commodities that bring both profit and power. Manaf, 10 years younger, comes from Moss Side. He's close to Salem, but his role is different. He's the man tied to cultivation, responsible for cannabis production, and directly connected to the firearms that police will later uncover. Together, they form a partnership where drugs and guns move side by side. It's not just about narcotics. The firearms are treated as part of the same trade, bought, stored, and moved through the same criminal contacts. Like many organized crime figures of their generation, they rely heavily on technology to protect themselves. Salem, in particular, turns to EncroChat, the encrypted communication platform favored by Europe's most dangerous criminals. He operates under the alias Rafael Caro Quintero, named after a Mexican cartel boss, a choice that gives investigators a clear indication of how he sees himself. At the same time, anti-surveillance devices are found in his possession, including a radio frequency detector designed to pick up tracking signals on vehicles or phones. For both men, the investment is heavy. They pour money into cannabis farms, ammunition stockpiles, encrypted phones, and equipment to keep their operation hidden. And for a time, it works. But in 2019, a raid on a quiet suburban street in Cheadle will expose the first cracks. And what police find in a garden shed will change everything. October 2019, Kingsway, Cheadle. It's an unremarkable property, the kind that draws no attention from neighbors. Neat garden, quiet street, nothing unusual. But in a shed at the bottom of the garden, officers uncover something entirely out of place: 2 self-loading pistols and a quantity of ammunition. At first, the find seems almost detached from the house itself. The occupants are quickly ruled out as suspects. They have no involvement, no ties to firearms, no explanation for why the shed has been used as an armory. But detectives soon learn that the shed has been accessed by outsiders, men carrying out building work at the address. CCTV footage gives the first real break. The images show Nahidul Manaf visiting the shed repeatedly in the days before the raid. His presence, along with his connection to Najib Salem, shifts the focus of the investigation. Forensic analysis of the weapons and the shed itself reinforces the suspicion, tying Manaf directly to the hidden guns. From that point on, the firearms conspiracy has 2 names attached to it. But the case doesn't end with that single raid. Detectives know they've only scratched the surface. The presence of pistols in a garden shed suggests there could be more weapons hidden elsewhere. So in January 2020, just 3 months later, police returned to the same Kingsway address for a second, more exhaustive search. This time, they look higher. In the loft space, accessible only by a hatch, officers make another discovery: a 3rd gun, more ammunition, and a silencer. The find is as significant as it is alarming. It suggests the pistols aren't isolated. They're part of a wider arsenal, stored in places where Manaf has access under the cover of legitimate work. The pattern is becoming clear. Each return to the property reveals more evidence. And each find pulls Manaf and Salem deeper into the investigation. What started with a single shed has now escalated into the recovery of multiple firearms, ammunition, and equipment designed to make them deadlier. For detectives, the raids confirm two things. The weapons belong to men already under surveillance, and those men are part of a broader criminal conspiracy. Salem and Manaf are no longer just names in intelligence reports. They're active players in an operation that blends drug trafficking with the storage and movement of firearms. By early 2020, the arsenal is exposed, but investigators still don't know the full scale of what they're dealing with. The answer will come from a very different source, a source that will blow the case wide open. Mid-2020, Operation Venetic. The National Crime Agency and European partners achieve something unprecedented. They infiltrate EncroChat, the encrypted communication platform used by thousands of criminals across Europe. Suddenly, thousands of conversations are captured in real time. Unfiltered, unguarded, raw. The messages attached to Najib Salem's profile reveal a man deeply entrenched in the highest risk end of the trade. Thousands of exchanges paint a detailed picture. Salem isn't just buying and selling cannabis, he's brokering bulk cocaine deals, moving large consignments with regularity, while also maintaining his foothold in the firearms market. The scale of the conversations leaves little doubt. This is a man treating guns and drugs as parallel commodities. Some messages are especially chilling. In one, he presses a contact to source ammunition in bulk, 250, 300, 500, as many as you can get. In another, he boasts about acquiring grenades and describes a 6-sprayer gun, a weapon designed for maximum damage. One thread details how 2 bullets would be enough to do the job, as long as they didn't miss. For police, it's unfiltered evidence of intent, of capability, of danger. Now, with this evidence in hand, the next step will take them back onto the streets, to Lee, Moss Side, and the cannabis farms of Cheetham Hill. The endgame is approaching, July 8, 2020. The operation moves into its decisive phase. In Lee, officers close in on Salem's home on Smallbrook Lane. Inside, they find exactly what they expected: $30,000 in cash, bundles of paperwork tied to the operation, and multiple mobile phones. Among the seizures is a radio frequency detector, the anti-surveillance device Salem used to check if he was being tracked. Ironic, really, because he was being tracked every single day. At the same time, another team moves on Nahidul Manaf in Moss Side. His arrest comes with another discovery. Cannabis plants are found growing at his address, tying him directly to the cultivation side of the network. What had first appeared as a supporting role now looks far more significant. But the real scale of their investment is uncovered further north. Cheetham Hill, an industrial hub in Manchester, 2 separate units used by the pair. When officers force entry, they find large cannabis farms fitted with infrastructure that speaks of serious money and planning. Lighting rigs, ventilation systems, irrigation. This isn't amateur hour. This is industrial-scale production. For Greater Manchester Police, the July raids are decisive. They don't just seize cash, plants, and equipment. They pull apart the entire structure Salem and Manaf have built. But the story doesn't end with the arrests. What follows is a courtroom reckoning. May 2024, Manchester Crown Court. By the time the case reaches trial, the evidence against both men is overwhelming. Crushing. The prosecution lays out the scale of their operation in forensic detail. The EncroChat messages, the firearms, the cannabis farms, the cash, the violence. When it comes to sentencing, the distinction in roles is reflected in the terms handed down. Salem, then 45 years old, is sentenced to 22 years in prison. Manaf, 36, receives 10 years after pleading guilty. In total, the pair face 32 years behind bars. 2 empires, 2 takedowns, 2 groups of men who believed they were untouchable. James Mulvey thought he could vanish into the shadows of Europe and live like a king forever. Najib Salem thought encrypted phones and anti-surveillance devices made him invisible. They were both wrong, because no matter how careful you are, no matter how many layers of protection you build, no matter how far you run, justice has a way of finding you. So what do you think about these cases and the sentences? Were they harsh enough? Should they have been longer? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take. And if you found this breakdown gripping, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode of UK True Crime Files. Because trust me, the next story is even darker. Stay safe out there.